All right, I want to show you today how we are going to make our Oaxacan animal shakers. You have looked at lots of pictures of the Oaxacan art form of creating these animal sculptures. Most of them are carved from wood. One of the artists we looked at, Manuel Jimenez, started by making them in clay and then switched to wood so you could get more detail. But they have really, really bright colors and patterns, as we talked about. So you have chosen what animal you want to make out of clay. Now I'm going to show you how we do that. I want to show you this example. It's not been fired or glazed, but I started to make a pig, and he has this clay beads inside to be a shaker. So one quick thing just to remind you, when you are working with clay, you have to be careful in adding details, and we'll talk about this more on a later video. But you don't want things to get too skinny or too fragile because they can break off. Like I made a tail just to see if it would last, a swirly tail like this, and he broke off because it was so small and it stuck out. You want to keep things close to the body of your animal. But we'll talk more about that in another video. Okay, so you're gonna have a placemat for your clay. You're gonna have a chunk of clay. You want to go ahead and break your chunk of clay into two pieces about the same size. If you need to readjust and push some back over here, totally fine. Then you're gonna make each of these into a ball. You can roll it on the table. You can roll it in your hand. That one's pretty good. Now, what we are going to do first is make two pinch pots. If you think back to kindergarten or first grade, you may have made a pinch pot in your art class. It's essentially what it sounds like. It's a pot that's made from being pinched. So we make a ball of clay, about the same size. Okay, pretty good. That one's a little bit smaller than this one, but it's okay. Then you're going to take your thumbs up. You're going to stick your thumb, make a dot in your clay, okay? That thumb is then going to push down into the clay, and then you're going to take these fingers like you're pinching, like a mouth, thumb and down the bottom, way down. It's like almost this far down, and then you're pinching with the outside fingers. Pinch, 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 and you're turning as you pinch. Pinch, turn, pinch, turn. When it gets big enough, you can actually put both thumbs in there and pinch. Your goal is to make it as even as you can. Now, as you're pinching, if you have things like this happen where it splits like this, you want to stop, take a minute with your fingers, smooth that back together like this. Okay, I want to even check down here. I've got some more folds or cracks that I'm going to smooth out before I go any further, before it gets more dry. The longer that you handle clay, the more dried out it's going to get. Clay is simply just dirt and water, and your hands have tons of water in them, in your skin, and your hands want to pull any water out of the clay they can because your hands don't want to get dry. So you will notice after working with clay, your hands tend to be very, very dry. So keep working, keep smoothing. Then you might be ready to go back and do some more pinching. You want to try to make the walls, the thickness. See how thick this is compared to over here? Down here it's really thin. So I'm going to pinch some more. You don't want it to be too thin though because it'll break and be really fragile. So maybe about the thickness of a pancake between your fingers. All right, so we're scooping it out like a little bowl. I've got some clay wrinkles right here. I'm smoothing out, or if you start to see cracks, smooth those out. All right, so that's not too shabby. I'm gonna set them over here. I'm gonna do my pinch pot to this one and start pinching. So we will take one class day to do this, and we're going to make some clay beads to add into our pinch pots. The beads are what they sound like. They're little balls of clay that we let dry, and they are going to sound like beads inside the shaker. You don't want to put wet pieces of clay in there because it could stick to your pinch pot. So when we make these pinch pots, then we're going to make our clay beads, and we're going to leave out all the clay beads to let them dry until the next week. All right, so I've got that pinch pot, feels pretty good. Let's check the back. I need to do a little smoothing. Your fingers are usually the best clay tools that you can use for hand building. And I say hand building because we're not using a potter's wheel, we're not using a slab roller, we're not using any other clay machinery or tools. We've got our hands and the clay. And we are building what we need from that. Sometimes if your clay gets too dry, you can add a teeny bit of water, but we're going to try not to do that because it makes your clay not as strong and gets a little flimsy. Okay, I've got my pinch pots. All right, so I just want to show you what this is going to look like. You'll end up connecting them like this, and we'll smooth together the seams, and this will become the body of your animal. And you'll add ears, eyes, nose, mouth, tail, whatever. You could even do little feet sticking out from underneath, not for it to stand on the feet, but if you wanted to have them poke out from him like he's sitting down on a table, you could do that. You could do arms. They just need to be attached up against the body of your animal. Okay, so now let's talk about how to make our clay beads. Okay, everybody is going to get a little chunk of clay, and you don't need much because we are simply just making some really small little balls of clay to use as our beads. All right, so I'm going to take my chunk of clay and just pinch off little pieces like this. You could go ahead and make about 10 beads. I don't know if we'll actually use that many, but better to have more than enough. Okay. Then you're just going to roll these little beads. You can use it between your fingers. You could do it on the table. You could do it in your hand, whatever is easier for you. And they don't have to be perfect little balls. They could be organic shaped. They could be lopsided. It is okay. And we're going to let these dry. All right, so at the end of class, when you've made your 2 pinch pots, we're not going to attach them yet because we got to let our beads dry. So we're going to set these to the side. I'm going to get somebody to go around and collect all the clay beads, and you are going to get a Ziploc bag with a piece of tape, and you will write your name on that piece of tape. And you might see other students' names. It's because we're recycling them. It's okay. You just put a new piece of tape over it and write your name. Then you're going to take your pinch pots. If it works for you, if one's bigger than the other, you could even nest them like this. Don't push too hard down in there. You don't want them to be stuck together, but just very gently setting it in there. And you're going to put it in your Ziploc bag. Okay. Then you are going to try to squeeze all of your air out of there. Okay. And then you want to very carefully zip your Ziploc bag. Make sure you hear it click. And then make sure you can't, if you gently pull on it, it doesn't come open. Okay, then we'll collect them and you'll get this back next week so we can attach them. All right. Set the beads to the side, and then we will clean up tables. And we don't throw these placemats away. We just restack them. They dry out and we'll use them next time. All right, thanks for watching.